size and the shape of the hair, the color and the shading. We look for pigmentation granules and the size of those and the distribution of those and any other physical characteristics that would appear on the hair.
Forensic analysts concluded that the single human hair found lodged in the hinge of the passenger side mirror was microscopically consistent with Kenneth Kane's hair. After all this time, it was still there.
I firmly believe Tom Druce washed that car the night of the incident or shortly thereafter. The car was then traded in, resold, I'm sure had been washed many times in the interim before we recovered it. And to recover that type of evidence linking someone to a crime is really amazing.
7 months after the accident, Thomas Druce was charged with homicide by vehicle in the hit-and-run death of Kenneth Kanes. He was also charged with insurance fraud, leaving the scene of an accident, and tampering with evidence.
Druce did try and cover up the accident. From the minute the accident occurred, he took deceptive step after deceptive step to throw investigators off the scent of him being involved in this particular crash.
He was never admitting that he had hit Mr. Kanes. He admitted that he had an accident, and he admitted some uncertainty as to what he may have hit. He claims that he thought he hit a sign, but obviously he never stuck around to report the accident and find out.
But the evidence told another story. By his own admission, Tom Druce was drinking with some staff members on the night of the fatal accident. No one knows whether he was intoxicated. Kenneth Kanes had also been drinking that night and was walking along Cameron Street, presumably on his way home. The witness said Druce applied his brakes, but kept going. Prosecutors believe Druce knew immediately he had hit someone or something. The broken windshield alone indicated this. Druce said he drove to his office a few blocks away, possibly to survey the damage. Why the security cameras in the parking lot malfunctioned that night is still a mystery. The next day, prosecutors think Druce continued the cover-up by washing the Jeep, then taking it in for repairs. He filed an inaccurate insurance claim when he lied about where the accident occurred.
Druce was worried about himself. He was worried about his career. He was concerned about his career. He was concerned about himself. I don't think he would appear rude. Had been a poor white person, or a poor Hispanic, whoever it was. He was concerned about himself.
If Druce had just stopped at the scene of the accident, I wouldn't be sitting here today talking about the Tom Druce case. He would have not been charged with hit and run. He would not have tampered with the vehicle, tampering with evidence, and would not have lied or committed insurance fraud.
6 months later, after the Jeep had been repaired, washed, waxed, vacuumed, and sold to a new owner, there was still a substantial amount of evidence remaining on the vehicle which linked it to Kenneth Kane's death. Glass from the windshield matched the glass in Kane's elbow. An arm hair consistent with Kenneth Kane's was in the passenger's side mirror. Fibers consistent with the victim's jeans were found in the Jeep's wheel well. And paint, like that from Tom Druce's Jeep, was found on Kenneth Kane's body.
But I can only imagine that he had to be devastated beyond belief to know that we recovered that vehicle and we're going to obviously process that forensically.
When they found the automobile, I thought, yes, they would find evidence. I didn't think that he could wash all that away.
It really sort of is a great tragedy. You have the young hero who's close to having all of his dreams realized. He tortured the metaphor even more, so he got a little bit too close to the sun and fell very far, very fast.
In September of 2000, avoiding a public trial, Thomas Drews accepted a plea bargain. He pled guilty to leaving the scene of an accident, evidence tampering, and insurance fraud. He served 2 years in prison, paid a civil fine to Kenneth Kane's family in the amount of $100,000, and resigned his position as state representative.
Sometimes it's astonishing what you can come up with the smallest thing. It just goes to show you that every little piece that you collect has a very important role in the investigation.
The medical examiner ruled the death an accident, but a forensic detective disagreed. The final resolution took 3 long years and raised questions about the accuracy of an autopsy. Paterson, New Jersey is an industrial suburb outside New York City, which has its share of violent crime. One of the town's most unusual cases happened in 1980.
I would personally rank it as being one of the most interesting challenge cases I've ever had.
29-year-old Frankie Pulliam was found dead on a deserted road underneath an abandoned car. Apparently, the person driving the vehicle hit Frankie, then fled the scene, leaving the vehicle behind. Frankie Pulliam worked for a local funeral home as a handyman. Before that, he served a brief stint in the U.S. military.
We would run errands for the funeral home, and the funeral home was also kind of a stopping off point for the police as well. And it was one of the more successful black funeral homes in Paterson.
Police discovered that the hit-and-run vehicle had been stolen a month earlier. The owner was a retired policeman who lived nearby, who had an alibi for the night before.
He was an elderly gentleman. There was no way that anyone would even, in their wildest dreams or imagination, suspect that he was lying.
To approximate the time of the accident, Paterson police checked patrolman's records for the night before and found an important clue.
Earlier that morning, at approximately 4 a.m., the same patrol unit did pass that area. And the significance of that is when they did pass at that time, the Maverick and the body were not there.
Since Frankie's body was discovered at 6 a.m., the accident occurred sometime between 4 and 6 a.m. But what was Frankie Pulliam doing, walking along this street in this part of town so early in the morning?
It wouldn't be a place where you'd generally be taking a walk, but it certainly would be a good place for a fun because it was dark and it was unlikely there'd be other people around.
Frankie's body went directly to the funeral home where he worked. The medical examiner conducted the autopsy there, a common procedure at the time.
State County did not have a centralized morgue, and what they did have were contracts with
area's funeral home that would act as morgue.
The medical examiner concluded that Frankie died of a massive trauma, the result of the hit-and-run accident.
There was nothing to show otherwise other than due to the nature of the injuries that were reported by the enemy.
But despite the autopsy report, investigators were troubled. They thought some of the elements of the accident scene looked staged.
The car was at the far end, dead end street. The car looked like it was facing out. I don't know how this individual driving vehicle could have gotten enough speed to run over somebody and kill them in a short distance.
Investigators searched the stolen vehicle for clues to the driver's identity. There were no fingerprints in the car, not even on the steering wheel. But investigators found blood inside the car on the passenger side, which was very suspicious.
Then instantly it gets more interesting.
And the focus of the investigation began to change. To find out whether Frankie Pulliam's death was truly the result of a hit-and-run vehicle accident, investigators called in Walter Suhaka, a nationally recognized expert in accident reconstruction. Luckily, police had taken numerous photos of the scene. And what Suhaka didn't see in those pictures was telling.
Behind the car, there were no skid marks. Anybody that comes down the road that hits the dead tree, in those days before ABS brakes, the first thing a person would do would be slam on the brakes. There was no skid marks.
There should have been serious front-end damage to the car, but there was none. And the position of the body under the car didn't make any sense.
In a pedestrian accident with a gentleman who is 5'8" and tall, and weighed 144 pounds, you would expect that if he was struck by a car, he would end up on the hood of the car, striking the windshield, and then roll up the side.
Also, it looked as if the impact literally knocked the victim's coat off his body. Suhaka said this could not be the natural result of an accident.
How did the coat come? It did not make sense. Also, there was a watch, with just a watch face, but no strap. That didn't make sense at all. We never found it there.
But most telling was the blood found in the tire tracks behind the car. If Frankie had been hit by the front of the car and lodged underneath, his blood wouldn't be behind the rear tires. And Mr. Suhaka found blood spatter on the windshield inside the car, and blood drops on the inside trim of the passenger side door. Obviously, there wouldn't be blood inside the car from a collision outside.
It was one of my suggestions that we need to examine the body to find out what the actual injuries were.
Since the death had officially been declared an accident, it took more than 3 years of legal wrangling to get permission for the exhumation. The second autopsy was conducted by Dr. Geeta Natarajan, a pathologist with the state coroner's office.
The first thing I noticed is the level of fibrillation and the condition of the body being fair. The second most important finding is that the external body surface failed to show any injuries. There were no bruises, there were no brush burn like it was dragged by a vehicle.
Dr. Natarajan discovered 4 linear fractures along the back of the skull. One, a depressed circular fracture, was not noted in the first autopsy. This blow by a hammer-like object to the back of the head did not happen from being hit by a car.
It's a very small area of concentrated area, and that's unusual when somebody is struck by a motor vehicle. You can't, when you work the wheel, basically on half the person's skull being struck by a small area of one of that place.
There were work standards around the room.
Well, first of all, under our or small war. Why would there be wood structures in the building? This was never mentioned during the first autopsy, nor do I believe that an autopsy of the dead person's full gender was discovered everywhere.
Hold your head.
Also, no procreation is virtually unheard of in the pedestrian state.
Shut up!
The manner of death on but how were these injuries overlooked in the first autopsy?
Hey, give me this rice.
And that autopsy was conducted at the funeral home of E. Lee White, the victim's employer. Apparently, White started the examination before the coroner arrived. Investigators now suspect that the original medical examiner didn't perform much of an autopsy. Apparently, he accepted the hit and run scenario since Frankie's body was found underneath the car. Regardless, investigators now knew Frankie Pulliam was murdered. But why? There were two separate autopsies performed on Frankie Pulliam's remains, done 3 years apart. The original autopsy concluded Frankie's death was the result of an automobile accident. The second autopsy concluded he was murdered with a blunt instrument before his body was placed beneath the car.
Had law enforcement had that information in the very beginning, Onysh's case in a much different direction right from day on.
And the photos of the vehicle provided evidence of where Frankie was killed.
When I started reading reports, they said there was blood inside the car. I had to read the report twice, it just didn't make sense. Turned out there was splatter from blood on the inside of the windshield and on the dashboard.
Serology tests
Go check on the
identified
baby.
the blood in the
Just
car
take a
as
look.
type O. Same blood type as Frankie's. Now suspicion. Insurance premiums total $3,500 a year, almost half of Frankie's annual salary.
First thing you're thinking is that certainly this is not right. It's very hard to say the least, but it's certainly a possibility that there's an insurance.
And who were the beneficiaries of Frankie's life insurance policies? One was his boss, his longtime benefactor, E. Lee White.
With his employer to insure him so heavily, multiple policies for large sums of money, is very suspicious. Which now creates a motive for the death of Franklin.
Another beneficiary was Erna Boone, listed on the policy as Frankie's sister. But records showed Frankie had no sister, and that Erna Boone was the maiden name of E. Lee White's mother. And two of White's friends, Warren Scott and William Brown, were also beneficiaries. Brown had been convicted a few years earlier for fraud.
Warren Scott and William Brown, they both had affiliations with the funeral home with Mr. White, also were beneficiaries on the policy, and the familial relationship that was cited there was being cousins. They weren't cousins.
Coincidentally, the insurance policies also contained an accidental death provision, meaning there was an extra payout